There we go. Now I can hear you.
Yeah, we're in. We are live.
Lovely. How are you doing today, Drone?
Good, man. How are you doing? Haven't talked to you in a while.
I'm doing my best. I think my strep throat's coming back, so I hope that gets dealt with. But
Oh, good. Have you haven't been feeling well?
Nah, I just had I almost slipped into sepsis like a week ago, and I think it's coming back.
Good, man. Glad to hear that.
You're glad to hear I'm getting sepsis?
No, I'm glad to hear you're feeling better.
No, I said I'm not feeling better.
Oh, you're not. Oh, I'm sorry. I misheard that.
Damn.
I apologize. Yeah, but so I heard you really wanted to get in on this. What's up?
I was just watching it, and that's how chats go, right? I was just watching it, like, should I go in here? I don't know if it's worth it. And then you offered, so I guess I'm here.
Yeah, why not?
So how do you analyze the current situation, DroneTek? I mean, you guys can keep talking. I'm just.
Well, I mean, honestly, I've been following this stuff forever, man. I've been talking about and arguing this fucking. I've been arguing this conflict forever. Like, it's the same thing over and over for decades now. I mean, what do you want me to say? I mean, you got a group that is objectively, you just look at the society. They are a Nazi, very Nazi-esque society, the Palestinians right now, ruled by Hamas. And lesser so on the Fatah side, on the West Bank side, but still,
Abbas,
yeah, I mean, still not, I wouldn't, again, I was talking about this earlier. I'm an American talking about this shit. Like, I'm talking about the things I see in the media. I don't know if this is accurate, but it just seems like the people ruling the Palestinian side are very Nazi-esque, and they have openly stated their goals, and they have a history of aligning with the Nazis. So, and not only that, but they have a history, very recent history. If you look it up, Google it, of flashing the Nazi swastika all over the place. So, like, I don't get it. I don't get the kind of knee-jerk reaction of the left.
But you keep on agreeing with literally every single reason why there might be a feeling from the Palestinians for why they might be angry.
So,
well, I'm sure they might have reason for being angry, but they're
then why do you say that? Like, I don't understand. You do understand. You just choose to discount 100% of what Israel's doing.
There's different levels there. Yeah, it's nuanced. I mean, yeah.
So for me personally, I always felt that the Nazi comparison, I try to stay away from that, mostly because there is a historical.
Oh, buddy.
Are you familiar with Benjamin Netanyahu's comments on the Holocaust in 2015?
No.
So, and I'm not doing this to do Dunkaroos. Most people don't know this because it's really like a really it's a really weird kind of conspiracy theory. So Benjamin Netanyahu, also known as Bibi, one of the boys, he basically tried to tie the Palestinians to the Holocaust by saying that Palestinian and Arab leadership inspired it, right? And that the Holocaust happened because the Palestinians directed the German government to do it. Now, this is Holocaust revisionism. And the reason why I'm always uneasy about the Nazi comparison is due to that thing. I've seen it use the Holocaust used as a political tool.
No, it's just a history.
Well, but that's revisionism. It's incorrect that the Arabs inspired the Holocaust.
There's no revisionism. The Palestinian leadership of the time allied with the Nazis and allied with
Are you
Hitler
saying that the Palestinians inspired the Holocaust?
Well, not that. I don't know about
that. That's what Netanyahu was claiming.
But wait,
I'm just
said
saying that
video,
they were. I just wonder if you would be digging this deeply if it were the other side, or something. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems like you're really digging deep here to come up with explanations to excuse.
No, it's very simple to point out.
We're literally allied with the Nazis.
So no. You're digging into reasons why we should just discount the entire fucking all of the actions of Israel.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not doing that. I am not saying Israel is blameless here at all.
Yeah, so my thing is, I do agree that Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and even some more members of Fatah are extremely radical anti-Semites, right? Any claim otherwise that's Hamas.
Serious, yeah.
Yeah, they're extremely anti-Semitic, right? But I don't want to kind of use that as a justification for certain actions taken by the Israeli state that I think makes the situation worse. For example, the Nazis, let's talk about the real Nazis. They did a bunch of terrible stuff in Europe, but that doesn't justify the and not, even though I don't think this is really comparable, that wouldn't justify the rape of Berlin, which was when the Soviet forces raped girls aged 12 to 80 and slaughtered German civilians. That would never justify such an action just by saying, well, the Nazis are anti-Slavic, therefore we can rape their women, right? That wouldn't be a justification.
Right, but I mean, Israel's retaliatory strikes in Gaza are replete with, like, they go above and beyond to warn civilians, that warn security forces at these civilian complexes that they're going to bomb these locations, and then they put in a warning bomb that just rattles the building, and then they send in the real thing to wipe it out. And like, Israel goes above and beyond, like, over and over and over and over again. And it's just,
it's hard for me to believe that these.
Hold on, we already went over this point. We already went over the point that even if they were to give the sirens and shit, you agree that they're like
but Hamas is to blame ultimately, because they're using those sites.
If I was to grant you the idea that there is going to be children and women as human shields, even if I were to grant you that's what they're doing, it still doesn't justify that the only option is just to, women and children there. Well, what a fucking shame. What a fucking meme. Oh man, there's just nothing else that we can do. When America, they have like a million layers of shit that they have to go through if they want to go into a neighborhood that has civilians in it.
Right. So all the Nazis really had to do is just make sure they launch all their attacks, put all their bases in civilian populated areas, and then the Allies would not have been able to attack, right?
Well, actually, if we look at the
Dresden, all they had to do during World War II.
Actually,
that's all they had to do. Perfect military strategy.
Are you familiar with the Dresden bombings?
Yes, I am.
Or let's say the nuclear strikes
on bombings in Japan.
Yes, those tactics were utterly brutal to such an extreme extent. A lot of people don't know, but the fire bombings of Japan were so brutal that they actually killed more civilians than the actual nuclear strikes.
Right. The fire bombings were way worse than the nukes.
And so the problem I have is we could use the justification of, well, they're close to civilians to justify carpet bombing, barrel bombs, and basically any type of military tactic being used, because we could say at the end of the day, well, the bad guys are close to the civilians, so just take the shot.
I would say this is way different for one, because they're literally launching the artillery into Israel from like civilian buildings, from residential buildings. They're in between them and stuff. So we know they're doing that, and they have their bases of communication within those buildings. And so then Israel's warning, they're saying, get all the civilians out, we're going to bomb it,
Well, the problem is wait, listen,
defending it, you play a part in that strategy, because
that
they know
is terrible. Don't say that I'm an ally of Hamas supporting
part of the strategy.
No, the problem is the problem is Israel has a terrible track record when it comes to, number one, warning the civilians in advance that they brag about, and number two, not just killing Palestinian civilians. One of the obvious things I could point to are the border protests where multiple children and disabled people were shot by Israeli snipers. Or in this case, 50% of the civilian casualties so far, according to the Gaza Ministry of Health, are civilians.
Which is Hamas.
And so if every time I pulled a trigger, it had a 50-50 chance of killing a civilian, when the response we're getting from the missiles have killed, what? I believe 7 people up to this point, which is not anything to scoff at, but the scale of the damage seems to be extremely proportionate in one direction, and 50% civilians.
Again, I said earlier, 109 Palestinians, including 28 children and 15 women, with 621 people wounded. That's how many people died and wounded just for the Palestinians.
that Hamas use these people as shields, and then you do what you're doing, and you say what you're saying right now, and you are playing your part in the propaganda effort that uses
even if I grant you that, you don't think there's a possible way to do it. It's just impossible to do anything else.
You're killing Palestinians. You guys are right now. Congratulations.
DroneTek, that is a terrible accusation to make of somebody.
True.
Okay, then I believe you are slaughtering Palestinian babies, DroneTek. You stab Palestinian babies every day before you go to sleep. I believe you drink the blood of Palestinian children every day before you go to sleep. It has as much basis of what you said about me. That's ridiculous.
Okay, well, I don't say any of that, but you are just doing...
Wait, you said that I am killing Palestinian children, DroneTek.
Understand that you're being used.
So what you're saying is that I should be okay with any civilian casualty that Israel ever does because it might make Hamas not look as bad. Well, no, that's what you're saying. Because then what about because the thing is, this is always what Israel will say. Anytime a civilian dies, they'll say, well, Hamas. That will always be the response.
Why are you so dismissive of the fact that they launch all their attacks from civilian
I am not.
areas?
No, the thing is,
you're the one that is downplaying any part of this. You are the only one that is downplaying any part of this because you downplay the responsibility that Israel has to not kill civilians. You are the one that downplays the responsibility that Israel has that by having much superior fucking firepower, superior technology, superior intelligence to the fucking Hamas.
Would Israel be firing into these areas if they were not fired from those areas?
They have more responsibility to not kill civilians because they have more technology and more capability to not kill civilians.
The strategy to Israel's demise is that their enemies just fire from civilian areas and then they'll just die, right?
No,
if
you can't think outside of that fucking dichotomy.
And just die.
You're actually incapable of thinking outside the dichotomy of, oh well, if they just get to go inside of if they don't get to launch from inside the buildings, then they're just gonna that's just how they win. They found the cheat code. But no, there's other options. You know hey, how many weapons have humans devised besides cruise missiles, DroneTek?
No, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Name me at least one. Name me at least one weapon besides
strategically focused.
Wait,
and when people say that Israel responds disproportionately, my argument is that if they responded proportionally, they would just carpet bomb with artillery.
Well, let's look.
And they did that in 2014.
The thing is, we have the look. Okay, one great example would be 2014. That's the last time the Israeli military invaded Gaza. 2,100 people ended up dying. The vast majority civilians and children. And when you look at the international, oh, by the way, I believe that Israel committed a war crime by attacking 3 UN-run schools in the enclave. And unless you think the United Nations was working with Hamas to attack Israel, then I don't believe the UN-run school had missiles sticking out of the windows. And then you can also look at the fact that Amnesty International said afterwards in a report that Israel showed callous indifference to the carnage caused on attacks on civilian targets. This is not a crazy position. In fact, this is a position 95% of the world holds. The only people who don't hold this position is the State of Israel and the United States. And unless you think that every nation on the planet is just led by just the worst anti-Semites in the world, then I find this difficult.
So I should go along. You're right.
No, I just find it very strange that basically every nation in the world, including ones that have much better human rights records than both Israel and the United States, have been saying consistently that the Israel has shown callous indifference to that. Not only nations, but international NGOs as well.
Okay, well, if that's your argument, like, who's in charge of the human rights in the UN? A bunch of fucking the biggest human rights violators on the planet. So I don't give a fuck about that.
Who in 2014 from the report? Wait. Okay, I don't know why that would matter when UN schools are being bombed. So if you say, no, I'm not using an authority argument. If you listen, I said 3 UN schools were bombed. Who's in charge of the UN doesn't matter unless you are making the allegation that the UN was working with Hamas in those schools. So you believe that? You believe the UN?
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
With no evidence, you're just going to claim that.
When I look at who's running the Human Rights Commission, and I look at the censures that come against Israel, for defending themselves, yeah, I don't really give a shit what they say, to be honest. I think they've discredited themselves.
I'm not even saying they said anything. I said their schools were bombed. This would be me saying like,
right.
So
why are their
ISIS planted 50 bombs in American schools, but I hate the U.S. Department of Education, so fuck them. That's the level of this dialogue going on here.
Do you think Israel is just a bunch of evil Jews attacking schools for no reason?
I don't think that's
Nobody's bringing up the fact that they're Jews. You're the one that brings that up because that's the only thing that you can.
So you just told me Israel attacked schools for no reason. Why
is
do you
Israel directly?
I don't believe they're doing it for no reason. I just think they do next to nothing to stop civilians from getting killed. I don't think that's their main concern. I think they want to use ultimate.
They want
I don't like Hamas.
Fucking morons like you. Say what you're saying now. Stop being retarded, dude. Stop being dumb. Stop being a tool of Nazi Hamas. Stop being a tool. Because that's what you are. You guys, you say you care about Palestinians, but you're tools for Palestinian death. You're fucking so...
You're the person who just blew off the bombing of Palestinian UN-led schools, saying "fuck them." They probably work with Hamas, the United Nations.
You just hate Palestinians, dude. Just
get bombed. Why would Israel bomb Israel?
You just don't care. You just hate them. You just hate them because they're Muslim. That's all I can say. You just accused me of just being the tool of Hamas just for me bringing up. Just okay.
Listen,
so if
DroneTek, you can win this debate by just admitting that you hate Palestinians, because that's the only other reason that you could possibly.
DroneTek, if I showed you footage of a Palestinian having their skull caved in with a bat, and I would be like, well, if I comment on this might look Hamas look good, so that's fine.
Israelis. I'm not saying any of that.
No, you're saying that anything I bring up, any war crime I bring up, you'll just divert. What about all the children shot in the leg on the during the Gaza protest? Was that fine? Because were the children all Hamas operatives as well?
Gaza protest? Wait, which one?
Any of them. Literally any of them. I can send you 2018 reports.
2018?
Yeah.
You're talking about 2018?
Yes.
Well, if you look, Hamas, the Hamas leader at the time did a story, and I put it in my video, the one that I'm responding to now, that he admitted that if there were, he said if there were 50 casualties, 60 of them were Hamas. So
you're saying that they have a 20% civilian death toll, and that's and wait, you trust Hamas now? Oh gosh, that's strange.
Keep talking amongst yourself. I'll come right back. I'll be right back.
2018 Gaza protest. It investigated the deaths of 189 Palestinians at the sites of an official protest and found that the Israeli forces had killed 183 with live ammunition. 35% of the fatalities were children, while 3 were clearly marked paramedics. Sure, those paramedics were like using Hamas first aid kits. And 2 were clearly marked journalists. I'm sure those cameras were Hamas cameras. The commission found. Well, but this is probably just UN. The UN Human Rights Council is obviously just doing this because they're all anti-Semites. Gotta shoot those journalists and medics for peace, you know? Isn't killing medics a war crime? It is. It is a war crime, chat. It is. I'm gonna go get some
he
water.
said that war crimes were justified earlier.
Did he?
If it's in defense of Israel, then yeah, because I brought up the fact that killing civilians
it makes
killing
sense.
Civilians. Yeah.
It makes sense that he would say that because he's doing psychological damage to us right now on a war crime level. Through this
he's
conversation.
A psyop. He's using psychological warfare against us. Yeah,
psychological torture. Be right back.
Yeah. Well, unless a third party comes in and tries to meet. Well, listen, we've tried to like settle this a million different ways. How do we, the civilians, de-escalate it? Are you talking about like the people in Israel, or are you talking about here in the U.S.? Because all we can do is elect people that are, you know, willing to call out Israel for when they do shitty things too. Ultimately, Israel holds every single fucking card here. They're the ones that have the ability to stop the violence, right? They're the ones that can do it. But
no, they can't.
Okay, why not?
Because the other side has openly stated that their goal is their eradication worldwide.
Is that the Palestinians or is it Hamas?
Hamas, their elected government, the Palestinian elected government.
The government that hasn't held elections in 20 years that the people don't really support anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's strange that just before the West Bank elections here, that this all started because it wasn't looking good for Abbas, and all of a sudden this all started.
Wait, do you know what started this?
I know about I know about Al-Aqsa and Al-Aqsa. They were fucking shooting fireworks at the cops and shit, and then they instigated a fight.
Who started it? My guy.
As far as I can tell, the fucking
Arabs no, they didn't start shooting fireworks at them until after they started shooting fucking tear gas into the fucking third holiest side of fucking
Israel
Islam.
Just walked in there and started firing shit. Fuck that. Come on.
No, I mean, like obviously there was shit before that, but they didn't start firing fireworks at them until after that.
This feels like weird, like defense of like the Iranian government. I remember hearing people like, wait, you think the Iranian government just unloaded on protesters? That's absurd. They wouldn't do that. They're their own people. That's what it feels like right now. Like the idea that governments can do extremely disgusting things in the pursuance of strategic objectives to a people they don't care that much about is like, this happens like all the time.
Well, I feel bad for the Palestinians because I just feel like they're just fucking cannon fodder, unfortunately, and all this and this struggle. I I've said this multiple times now, but I know Israel is not blameless in this. I understand that, but I don't understand how you can defend what is going on right now.
I'm not defending Hamas. I opened up my I opened up saying that Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and even members of Fatah, which is Abbas's party, are anti-Semites. Not all of Fatah members, but a decent amount of them. And anti-Semitism is bad, and Hamas is terrible and evil. And I believe that them using their rockets to target civilian centers is terrorism, and it is bad. Now, I even said as a prerequisite. Well, okay, well that's just like. That feels
they
like
said they want to wipe out Jews.
Wait. Now you're not. No, it's no. Wait. No. We're not gonna do this. Where I say it's bad, and you're like, that's not a strong enough word. Okay, I believe it is literally the worst thing to ever happen. Is that better? Okay, it's worse than the Holocaust. It's worse than like I don't know every famine ever. It's worse than lynchings. Worse than slavery. Is that enough moral condemnation for you? Okay. Happy? Okay. Jeez, man. The moral grandstanding on language, man. This is some SJW tactics.
I feel like, I'm up against people here trying to defend. Like, I don't know.
Look, I'm a gay man. Hamas does not like me, okay? They would probably kill me if I was in their preview in any way. And the Palestinian government has been known to use homosexuality as leverage against Palestinians who are gay to try to extract information. Like this is, I believe Israel might have also done that though. I'm not a fan of Hamas. But I'm looking at the situation, look at the vast majority of damage, and I look at the escalation from Al-Aqsa Mosque, from the evictions in East Jerusalem, to the security apparatus increased at the old gates of Damascus, and I look at this escalation, and a lot of this escalation was caused by the Israeli government, and I have to call that out.
Okay, all right. Well, if you're gonna support the retaliation, you gotta support the retaliation for Israel and the fact they're gonna
support. I didn't support the missiles. What do you mean?
I'm just saying, like the evictions. As
all
far
or
as
nothing.
I've read, the people who were evicted had no proof of ownership of the territory they were on.
But we've already been over that. Holy shit, DroneTek. Do you have like the memory of Dory from Finding Nemo? Holy shit.
That's what I've read. That's all I did.
But then I explained to you that yes, they didn't have any proof that was accepted in court because Israel created the rules that was used in court. They had documents that they could prove that they built those houses and they've lived there for so long. But then Israel didn't want to accept those documents because it wasn't the one they liked.
There was no documents. No documents. From what I read, there was nothing. Zero. No documents.
Absolutely, because there are people that are in that neighborhood that went on fucking news shows and they explained the situation and they asked them, well, is there any proof that you have? And they're like, yeah, no, we have proof, but the Israeli courts won't accept our proof. What?
I'm just saying, man. Like, it's way more murky than
you
you're
are
trying to make it out.
uncritically supporting literally everything that Israel does when there is verifiable proof that they do shitty things to the Palestinians, and you want to say that there's no reason why Palestinians should ever be mad.
You're talking about normal governmental shit. You're saying like you're trying to act like it's some sort of assault. No.
Okay, but okay, I would.
By the way,
I would agree with you. Hold on. I would agree.
Oh my God. Okay,
DroneTek, I would agree with you if there wasn't already a pattern of Israel and Israelis going into Palestinian land and trying to steal their land. If there wasn't already a pattern of Israel.
Like, look, wait, listen.
What
the Jordanian government,
Israel has been. Sorry, go ahead, Dylan.
The Jordanian government, and this is like a few examples of what's going on. Like the Jordanian government went in to show and give documentation to the. What's funny?
No, I'm laughing at the chat. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The Palestinian people documentation to show that the kingdom built homes for Palestinian refugees in East Jerusalem after the creation of Israel in 1948. Like that's just one instance of different. Like the thing is, those documents are held on property and land in Jerusalem, and those were passed specifically to the Palestinian Authority. And those are specifically, and that was from I think that was in April, and that was done specifically to try to stop these expulsions from Sheikh Jarrah, which I still don't know how to pronounce specifically. And I believe that there was multiple like times that the Israeli government in the 1970s and 80s and 90s kept giving waivers to acknowledge like, hey, these people have been here since 1948. It'd be pretty ridiculous to kick them out. But it's been recent that this idea of actually like, wait, maybe we should just go hardcore on this by certain far-right Israeli groups to push these people out of their homes. People who have lived here for the entirety of their life. This will do nothing but add to the large amount of Palestinians who are displaced, the millions who are in Jordan, Egypt, and around the world who have no state or no home to call their own.
I mean, I can understand where you're coming from there. I do. And I can understand that point of view.
And then that happened after the Old Gate of Damascus situation, which I don't know a ton about that, but basically the Old Gate of Damascus is where a lot of Muslim worshippers kind of gather. There was security apparatus. Thankfully, I believe the Israeli state actually backed off of increasing like a bunch of like checkpoints in that area. And then it led to the Sheikh Jarrah situation with the evictions. And then after this, after there was already protests going on, came the famous raid of the third holiest site of Islam.
Well, here's the thing, and it's like somebody here said in the chat, they said sarcastically, but too bad because God says it's mine. Celtic frosting there. Here's the thing, is that Israel exists, all right? Israel is there. It's going to be there. It's not going anywhere. And so like you have to find a solution, and we've had solutions out there multiple times. Like Arafat, like I talked about earlier, could have taken a awesome 98% of what he wanted, you know, he could have got it, but he didn't.
What do you think about right of return then? What do you think about that issue?
He said like eradication of Israel is the goal. So like,
I think the Oslo Accords was a lot closer
now.
They
want to stay now as they're launching artillery onto a civilian population. My position here is like no other country in the history of the world would ever be asked to go through this sort of fucking trial for their existence. Like, and I know you guys are seeing it from the existence of Palestine, but really what this is about is the existence of Israel.
But the thing is, Israel's existence is under no threat. Like zero threat. No, wait. Okay, let me ask you a question.
That's why they're being artillery.
No.
That's why
you gotta listen to what I said. It's under no real threat, as in there is no scenario where Hamas pushes Israel into the sea. There is no scenario where Iran pushes Israel into the sea. Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Wait. Israel is a nuclear power. What are they gonna? Are you telling me Hamas with missiles and balloons are going to be able to push Israel, one of the most competent militaries in the world? They've got the IDF. They've got a population that signs up to the draft and is extremely ready to fight. They've got a competent military air force, which, by the way, Palestine doesn't have an air force. They have Hamas doesn't have an air force either. They also have nuclear weapons. Israel and the state of Israel would be perfectly willing to use nuclear weapons in its defense. There is no scenario where Israel is pushed into the sea. There are scenarios where terror attacks occurs against Israeli civilians, but really there's no scenario where Israel gets eliminated.
Yet we have like recent history examples of like all the Arab nations aligning,
and it changed,
Israel.
And the situation's changed. What nation can do it? Please tell me what nation will be able to do it.
Well, I mean, like we're already seeing
Syria,
like the strategies
Egypt,
are changing.
Saudi Arabia, Iran, which nation?
Iran. I would say Iran is definitely. I mean, they're gonna have nukes soon. Obviously, they're gonna have nukes.
How are they gonna do it?
How are they gonna do it? What do you mean?
So you think they're gonna like launch nukes against Israel and that'll do it?
Well, I'm not sure that's
and
what
then
will
what will Israel do? Launch nukes at Iran, and then it's mutually assured destruction.
Like Baltimore motherfuckers, and that they openly state their goal of like erasing Israel, just like Hamas. And so yeah, I find it weird that you guys
most of these countries in the Middle East.
DroneTek, I'm declaring right now that I'm going to eliminate your YouTube channel. I will use my magic powers to eliminate it. Bzzz. That's not going to happen, though. There's no real threat of that happening. I could say that all day. It's not going to happen.
Well, what will happen are constant attacks that are spurred on by Israel or funded by Israel, and then the media and folks like yourselves.
You mean Iran?
The attacks are funded by Israel?
Propaganda attacks on Israel and just wither it away little by little.
But the attacks are funded by Israel?
No,
I think you meant to say Iran.
Yeah, Iran funds. I mean, obviously Hezbollah.
Yeah,
is funded by Israel, the proxy army of theirs.
You mean Iran?
Iran. What did I say?
You said Israel. You said Hezbollah is funded.
You said Israel earlier.
Iran. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't know why you think that if we were to try and create some kind of two-state solution, so that there would be lasting peace.
We've already tried Israel. That. We've been there. This is covered ground. They rejected it.
But there are more people. There are more people in Palestine.
Why was it rejected? What was it? Why was it rejected? And also the situation's changed. Wouldn't you agree?
Why did Arafat reject that?
What do you think of the right of return? What do you think of that issue?
The right of return?
Yeah. What do you think of right of return?
I can't say I know a lot about that, to be honest.
Well, then I guess we shouldn't talk about this then. I guess we.
Well, hold on. Explain real quick.
Right of return is basically like the idea, like due to the multiple wars, millions of Palestinians have been displaced, and they're living in countries that are not their own, Jordan, others, and they're refugees.
Okay.
And the idea is like, hey, right of return has to do with the idea of giving Palestinians land for them to return back to their historic homeland. That's the idea.
Right.
And that's something that was an issue of debate at the Oslo Accords and was a sticking point. Like, what do you do with all those people?
Yeah, I get that. Okay, and I am curious, and this gets back to what I was saying earlier. Why, like, none of these neighboring Arab nations want to take these people in?
Well, it's also because I think a lot of Palestinians don't want to just like leave forever from their homeland, right? Like, for example, if one day a war came across my neighborhood and I had to flee all the way to like Guatemala, like at the end of the day, I'd be like, I want to go home. I want to go back home to where I was from. I want to go to my local church. I want to know my local community. Like that means a lot to me.
Yeah, you go home to a place that you wouldn't recognize, though.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, and I don't know all the details of all that, but it seems in the current situation like that's just not the situation we're dealing with. Like, we have to deal with the reality, and the idea that we're gonna stand around and make excuses for Hamas and the things they're doing. And I know you guys are not doing that. I'm not saying that, but that's where we're at now. I mean, that's where we're at.
Why is that not a reality?
We can launch nonstop artillery attacks on civilian populations, and Israel is somehow like the one at fault here.
No,
well, I believe both. I believe Israel and Hamas are at fault for much of the situation, and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
And
if you want
to, however, again, like I said earlier, it is in the ball is in Israel's court to stop the violence, because when
Hamas
you have
offered a ceasefire and it was rejected by Israel.
Reject what? Ceasefire?
Yeah.
Israel has done all the capitulating. They removed themselves from
literally
the West Bank
like
and
this
Gaza.
in this most recent batch of shit that went down. There was an offer of a ceasefire, and Israel said, "Nah, fuck you.
Not
We're
that I like
going to
Hamas,
Gaza."
but Hamas is doing it because they're getting
bombarded. Why would you say, "Oh yeah, we're cool"?
Yeah,
we're
because
good.
the entire because civilians are being killed, civilians are dying, and ceasefires is meant to stop the violence. That's the point of a ceasefire.
Wow.
It's all a facade.
You're misplacing blame. You're misplacing blame, as far as I can tell. Sorry.
Who do you think we're blaming?
Well, I don't think you're necessarily blaming Israel. I honestly, I'm kind of impressed with you guys. I think you guys are more nuanced than what I'm used to running into on this topic. But
so, do you now believe we're not tools of Hamas now?
No, I don't think you're actually, Dylan. Come on, buddy. I don't think you're a tool of Hamas. We've known each other a little bit now. I don't think you're
what about
an
me,
actual tool of Hamas. Yeah. I was trying to make a point.
Wait, what about Palestinian Islamic Jihad? Maybe I got one of their cards in my wallet. Have you checked my wallet yet?
No, I'm just making a point that I made in my videos, that when you strike out, when you lash out at Israel for civilians killed in their retaliation strikes from when they're retaliating on sites that they've been attacked from, then you're playing into Hamas's tactics.
I am not against the concept.
You're willingly playing a part in their propaganda tactics.
I am not against the concept of Israel responding to missile strikes. I believe they have a right to defend themselves, just like Palestinians have a right to defend themselves. The issue for me is I believe Israel has acted callous when it comes to civilian casualties. And I have Amnesty International reports, UN, and I know you don't respect the UN, but I would really ask you to look at the reports from the UN Human Rights Council when it comes to like the 2018 protests. Like, for example, if we look at the 2018 protests and what you were talking about, 35% of the fatalities were children. 3 were clearly marked paramedics. I don't think it was like med kits for Hamas, right? And 2 were clearly marked journalists. I don't think there was like a rocket in like the camera, right? And so when I see that, I believe that there's a certain callousness that has developed culturally towards Palestine. For example, look at the lynchings, which we have pure evidence of, that are occurring all throughout Israel. There are Israelis lynching Arabs, and there are Arabs also, in instances, lynching Israelis. And that type of callousness on a cultural level, and as it spirals out of control, can lead to terrible war crimes.
Yeah, it's not Jewish people rioting against Arabs in Israel right now. It's Arabs rioting against
No,
Jews.
there are. We have live Israeli TV footage of Arabs being dragged off of cars. Like, I can send you the footage if you want. Like,
okay, I'm not saying it's not possible.
Benjamin Netanyahu went on television to specifically say, "Hey, stop lynching the Arabs, please."
Right.
So, Dylan, what's the optimal resolution in your opinion?
God, man, if I knew the optimal resolution to the Israel-Palestine conflict, I wouldn't be streaming on Twitch and I'd be a billionaire, right? But I just don't. I would say that my personal opinion is that we are in a position here that is extremely complicated. Where number one, usually
it's very complicated.
Yeah, one thing would be Jordan, right? Jordan is usually in history, due to their large amount of refugees in the country, and the Jordanian king has usually acted like sometimes as an intermediary, but the Jordanian king and the Jordanian government does not have a great relationship with Netanyahu's government, so that's really kind of off the table. Definitely because they are outraged at what's happened at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and of course their relationship with the Temple Mount. Then there's the problem of, well, what about Israel? Maybe Israel will do something different this time, or do something to like bring a long-standing end to this. But Benjamin Netanyahu's government, with these cyclical elections, there's not really enough like support or unity in the Knesset to push anything forward. And now, due to the recent escalation in violence, beforehand we thought Benjamin Netanyahu was going to lose power and we were going to actually see somebody else take over for prime ministership. But due to the recent escalation in violence, it seems that coalition has fallen apart, and we're going to go into another round of Israeli elections. And there's also the fact that historically, if there's anything that has helped the Israeli right, it is conflict in the Gaza Strip and conflict with Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. These things make people, of course, if you have missiles launching over your border, you're going to be like, well, who's the guy who's hardest on those people? And you go to Netanyahu. Right. So this is a scenario where Benjamin Netanyahu has no political or strategic reason to end the conflict now. That's why I think he rejected the ceasefire that was proposed by Hamas, because this is somewhat of a political lifeline to somebody in the middle of a corruption scandal. Then you go to the United States, and Joe Biden's basically like, well, but Jake Sullivan's talked to some people, and we're sending sending diplomats, and we're gonna stop this UN resolution to condemn what's happening with the evictions because we're gonna get in direct diplomatic negotiation. But I've seen no real oomph behind him to do anything of significance to stop it. So when I see all these roadblocks, in reality, most likely, I don't think we're gonna see an end to the violence anytime soon. What I would personally like is to see Biden use certain tools and leverage to bring Israel, who has the vast majority of leverage, to the negotiating table. And I'd like to see the international community, and I would like for that ceasefire to be enacted. But there's no real... Hello?
Sorry.
But I don't see any motivation from the Israeli government, and I just don't see it. I just don't see it. So I'm actually quite doomer right now. And other scenarios, maybe, but I just don't see it. I don't see a real solution in the forefront.
Yeah, but you're describing Israeli internal and regional politics and the contentions within those governments. But what I'm asking is the resolution internationally. What would you like to see in place that you think would resolve the fighting and the warring that's going on?
I would like to see I would like to see an acceptance of the ceasefire. I would like to see the United States abstain when it comes to the UN Security Council vote on condemnations on evictions. And I would like to see Biden use some leverage on things like, for example, the fact that we gave Israel a big thing, which was moving the capital to Jerusalem. That is a negotiating chip we gave them for literally nothing in exchange. And I feel like the smart thing would have been to use that to like get leverage or get concessions out of the Israeli state. But I mean, yeah, so that's some suggestions.
Do we partition Jerusalem? Does Israel cede? How much land do they cede to the
Ridiculous
Palestinians?
TV, I disagree.
Do they get government representation?
I don't think they're gonna cede any land. The biggest thing I would say, a biggest sticking point for me personally, would be the question of the illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. How do we deal with that? Because number one, people are living there now, so it's like obviously they don't want to leave. They vote in Israeli elections. For every point and parcel, they are Israeli citizens. But they are in the territory, the occupied territory of the West Bank. And so I think the biggest sticking point for me is probably, what do we do with those settlements? How do we deal with the West Bank? And I know Jared...
They can be compensated. They can be compensated and they can withdraw from those lands and cede it to Palestinians. I mean, that's a
good idea. I just don't see it as like politically feasible. Because if we look at like 1 year ago, right? Before the UAE like opened relation with Israel, but a lot of people forget, like some people like say that's like, hey, look, that's Trump's like biggest accomplishment. The reason why that occurred was because Benjamin Netanyahu was basically threatening to just permanently annex all those settlements, which was something that's illegal under international law. It was going to look something similar to the Golan Heights, which is also like an illegally annexed territory from Syria.
Why were the Golan Heights secured?
Because they're of extreme strategic significance for the defense of the state of Israel.
Why else? Because snipers were taking out Israeli civilians.
Well, yeah, that's why I said they're extremely significant for the strategic protection of Israel.
Right.
Whereas in these settlements,
innocent civilians were being killed. Yeah.
You can't make that argument for the settlements, though. They don't increase Israel's security.
Are you sure? Because it seems like Hamas's range has just gained over time. Now they can hit everywhere.
I have a question. So
how would keeping the settlements in the West Bank keep Israel safer?
It limits the range of their enemies.
How?
Because weapons have range, and if you take territory, that limits the range of their.
But don't you think like
weapons.
maybe like it's easier for people to recruit into Hamas and all these organizations if you've taken land illegally and occupying a state? It is illegal under international law.
I mean, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Maybe.
So you don't
like if I went into your house and was like, hey, like DroneTek, your house is like mine now. Bye. Like obviously, like I am not going to excuse anybody joining a terrorist organization. But if you want somebody to join a terrorist organization, the quickest thing you can do to do that is to do a great injustice upon them, and then not fix that injustice.
You're saying a great injustice, but that's not necessarily the case. When we're talking about what happened, what you're saying was the catalyst of all this, ejecting people from territory they had no proof of owning.
Again, I just talked about like Jordanian monarch, whatever. We don't need to get back into it, but I would say for the people who have been living there since the 1940s to now all of a sudden in 2021 being told, you need to live even though you've literally known anything else before. Like, there's a reason why the Israeli government has waived it before, because it was seen as like a far right thing to do. It was seen as like an extremist move.
You don't. Right, that's something you take to court. You don't launch missiles, artillery on civilians. But yeah, I don't totally disagree with what you're saying. I think there is maybe something there. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that if you're trying to rationalize the attacks with that,
I'm not rationalizing it. I'm saying there's a reason why they're happening, right? Because if for example,
okay, that's what you're doing.
Can I wait, no, listen.
I'm not rationalizing.
I'm not. That's the reason. Okay, listen. Okay. Wait. Okay. So if the economy,
it's not a legal one.
It is partially legal, but if the okay, here's a great example. Let's say the economy collapsed, and that's bad, right? If the economy collapsed, if we're all like eating roaches and stuff, I could be like, okay, why did this happen, right? And I could try to look for an explanation so it doesn't happen again. But then someone's like, what, you're going to rationalize everybody's like suffering and economic poverty? A great example would be rioting. If you look at Lebanon, the reason why there's a lot of riots in Lebanon right now is because of the economic destruction of their economy, hyperinflation, banks limiting withdrawals, and mega corruption, and Hezbollah's control over the country, right? There's a lot of reasons why those riots are happening. Now, I can stand here and I can wag my finger and be like, and this is true, it is bad to riot. It is bad to destroy property. But that's not going to stop the rioting. Wagging our finger isn't going to stop it. You need an actual solution as to how do we deal with that economic desperation? How do we deal with Hezbollah? How do we deal with the corruption? And so that's how I view international conflicts.
Except for when we're dealing with Hezbollah and we're dealing with Hamas, we're dealing with terrorist organizations who have openly stated goals of genocidal.
Right.
So it's like,
yes,
how can we capitulate to a Nazi?
Listen, the thing is, I'm not telling you to capitulate to Nazis.
What you're asking me.
What I'm saying?
How do you deal with a homicidal?
Okay, I need more than I need. Okay, I'm being asked two questions at once, so let me answer one question at a time. So the thing is, like ISIS, was an organization of terror and slavery, a disgusting organization. Now, I can say our solution to deal with ISIS is just bomb them in the smithereens, and that's great. ISIS is bad, but you know what? ISIS, you need to actually, how do we stop ISIS from getting recruits? One thing is having a stable economy. No, it's not. You can't just bomb.
No, just kill them.
That's
the answer.
That isn't just the answer. If you look at the reason why
a lot of people joined ISIS is probably because people that they knew died.
If that was the case, Israel has been bombing Hamas for generations now, and Hamas still exists. So it looks like bombing them isn't the answer. No, it's a combination of factors. For example, if you want to deal with terrorism, one thing you can do is help invest in education. You can invest in the economy. You can invest in these, because if you give somebody economic opportunity, you give them a decent education, they're less likely to join said organizations. Look at the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip, listen. The Gaza Strip has 48% unemployment. That most certainly has played into the fact of many people joining Hamas. If you are unemployed and you are seeing these bombs and you had a son killed in an Israeli airstrike, Hamas, even if they're a disgusting organization, might seem like a decent option to you in that instance.
I'd like to counter that point, if I may. There are tens of millions, perhaps many more, Indians who are living in poverty, don't commit any acts of terror, don't attack the government, don't war against their neighbors. Poverty is a problem, education's a problem, sanitary conditions are a problem.
Actually, there actually are terrorist groups within India, actually.
No, there are reactionary groups against the Islamic Pakistanis that attack them.
Communist terrorists, India.
You're right. They are terrorists.
And how many countries have they attacked?
Well, India, the Indian government.
I haven't heard of it.
Well, that's because you're not Indian. You don't live in India. That's probably why. If you lived in India, and there's also, the thing is, if you look at areas of higher rates of poverty in India, there's more likely to be higher rates of crime, higher rates of violent crime and criminal activity, thievery, poverty and crime overlap very heavily.
Right, but taking bread from someone's table is different than blowing yourself up and killing civilians, right? We could agree those are two different crimes, and there's different motivations for those crimes.
Well,
And
yes.
and what makes it so important is the motivation. Why are they doing this? Can we solve the problem that's creating the motivation? With someone who's in poverty, perhaps you could solve the crime of stealing if you enrich them. They won't feel compelled to steal because they have enough money to pay for that.
That's
which
why I
they
said
need.
also you need education and poverty combatants at the same time, right? I think it's multi-pronged. I don't think it's as simple as like if we just give Palestinians money, then all of a sudden everything's solved. I think it's a bunch of things to that. Number one, you fight the radicalism. Number two, you invest in education. Number three, you invest in the economy, right? And once you like, hey, my son didn't get blown up by an Israeli airstrike. I have a decent job, and I went to school and know that blowing up people is pretty bad, and then I think that they're a lot less likely to join a terror organization. I don't
Here's
think.
the second part. Here's the second. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but here's the second part to my argument. You're familiar with Muhammad Atta, right?
What about him?
Do you know who Muhammad Atta is?
I'm terrible with names. Let me Google him quick.
Google him, and as you're googling him, I'll just give you.
Yeah, he was an Egyptian. Okay, yeah, September 11th. Yep.
Yeah,
he's one of the hijackers.
Yes, he's not only a hijacker, he was a ringleader who met with Osama bin Laden. His dad was a doctor. His mom was an academic of some sort, I believe, a professor, middle class, very well-to-do, very well-educated, and had no problems with money, had no problems with education. He went to Germany to earn some sort of degree in engineering, I believe it was. Got radicalized in Germany at a mosque in Munich, I think it was, or major metropolitan area city. He was the mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks. What was his motivation if it wasn't poverty or
ideological? That's education. You need to educate people that this is bad. It's not bad. But the thing is, this isn't okay. So my argument isn't that poor people are the only terrorists, right? My argument is that poverty, conflict and war, and a lack of education combined can increase rates of terrorism. Though. That's an undisputable. That's undisputable. This is not like a controversial statement.
Movements generally are going to be people that are going to be better educated and better funded than people that are like the grunts of any organization.
Okay, can I clarify what I'm saying? Because I feel like people are arguing against something that I don't think.
Right. Yes.
I don't think any of you disagree with me though. Like really, like my statement is poverty and a lack of education combined with conflict are likely to increase an area's rate of terrorism. That is all I am saying. So if you help deal with these things, you will help decrease terrorism. Like this isn't a.
I'm trying to explain to them that the even though that one person might be well educated and they were just going off of ideology, most people don't want to. Well, hold on. People that are in charge of extremist movements generally have better are generally educated people, have some kind of higher education compared to the general people in the movement. Why is this? Well, probably because most people aren't just like going to go out and that go out and are able to get a good job and get a degree and a good job and have a family and settle down. Those people, generally speaking, don't pick up an AK-47 and say death to America, right? Now, there's going to be people in charge of that, right? These are the thought leaders. Poor people are the ones that are having shit happen to them directly, and they're probably pretty upset about shit happening to them directly, and that's why they do it, right? We want to lower the amount of people that are radicalized through poverty or war or something like that, because people don't just become terrorists for shits and giggles. They do it for legitimate reasons.
I'm just saying it doesn't take an army of people. It takes a handful of irrational people, and their irrationalism, it does not derive from poverty, and it does not derive from a lack of education. There's an indoctrination there, and that's the real poison. And that may be an unpopular.
What kind of person will likely to be indoctrinated by extremism?
It's easier to be indoctrinated though if you're poor, don't have a job, and have no education.
Have no education. That's what we're trying to say.
Look at every time like a fascist dictator. Like for example, Nazi Germany. When the Nazis were like still getting popular, it was because it was right after the war. Everything was poor. Everything was sucked. Then the economy started to recover, and you know what? Then the Nazis' popularity kind of plummeted. Then it went back into the toilet, and then the Nazis became much more popular again. Now it's not that indoctrination didn't play a role there; it played a big role there. But when you put somebody in an economically desperate situation, they're much more likely to listen to what radicals have to say.
Yeah, but they needed an army to invade countries. When it comes to terrorists, you only need a handful of people. Timothy McVeigh he had a group of 3 people, took down the federal building in Oklahoma, killed 200 people, and he escaped. He didn't even suicide bomb himself. He just blew up a van and killed people and just shuttered our nation for
We're not saying that's going to get rid of all terrorism, but this is one way that you can reduce the amount of terrorism in a society.
But what's the motivation? You got to address the motivation, and you're saying it's poverty and lack of education.
I'm saying this is okay. I refuse to believe you really disagree with what I'm saying. I really do. I refuse to believe that you don't think that poverty increases rates of terror.
It's because he's trying to insinuate that people that are Muslim are more likely to be terrorists just by virtue of being Muslim.
Real quick, if we suddenly, let me ask you this real quick, guys. Let me interject here real quick. If we just suddenly shoehorn this discussion into the January 6th insurrection,
yep.
Would you guys suddenly change your...
No, I believe the same thing. I actually did a whole stream on this, on how, on average, if you looked at the people who were arrested from January 6th, they had a higher rate than the general population of financial troubles.
And also...
Really?
Yep.
Really? Yes, 100%.
There were rich people amongst them, but...
one person actually killed at that... The one unarmed woman killed was a high-ranking Air Force.
That's an anecdote. It's one person. If I point at if I go into the most poverty-stricken place in Chicago and push somebody, and that one person happens to be rich, that doesn't mean Chicago is full of rich people.
First of all, I doubt what you say because it costs money to travel to Washington D.C. and most people who are poor don't have discretionary income to get a hotel where it's packed and they're gouging and then stay for a few days, rent a car. You're talking about these are the poorest people.
I didn't say they're poor. I said they had a history of financial troubles. I can link you the article if you want it. And this is something I thought you would be like, oh, okay, so you agree that it isn't as simple as they raided it and are terrorists because they're Trump supporters. Because if you want me to say that, then I guess the conclusion would be Trump supporters are depossessed to be terrorists or something. Like, what do you want me to say?
I also don't want to glaze over the fact that this guy admitted that Muslims are just more likely to be terrorists. So.
No, don't.
Yeah, I'm not ready to have the conversation at this.
Yeah, I don't even know where we're at this point.
I would love to have that conversation because we have a shitload of Muslims here in the U.S.
Apparently, at this point, we're trying to excuse artillery on civilian populations in Israel with poverty.
No, I'm not. I swear to God, that's not what I'm saying.
DroneTek, I swear to God, how many times have we already been over the point and then you agree? Yeah, no, I agree. You guys aren't trying. You keep on saying that we're saying it's okay to bomb civilians as long as they're Israeli, but we haven't said that. You agree that we don't say that.
Here is the evidence. A majority of the people charged at the Capitol riots had a history of financial trouble.
According to who?
I just sent DroneTek. I'll send it to you as well. Is this really so? Okay, is your argument that Trump supporters are just inherently more violent? Is that the argument then? Or like what? Because I'm trying to give it like
they weren't violent though.
They were violent, and when you have a lower rate of education, you're more likely to be taken in by conspiracy theories like QAnon. That's not always the case. There's a lot of more underlying things.
Why is QAnon? Hold on. Why is QAnon such a fucking topic for you motherfuckers? Like
I just brought it up once. What do you mean?
It's like nobody's talking about
because QAnon people have killed people, man. Like the QAnon, this one QAnon person like literally killed a mafia don. Like this is a real thing.
What? What are you talking about?
You don't know? Yes, a QAnon
person
conspiracy theorist killed a mafia don. That is a real thing that happened.
This is true shit.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, so is that a QAnon person?
Talk about QAnon constantly. Why do you guys always
what do you mean? I just brought it up once. The entirety
the media. The media is constantly
okay,
bringing
Why are you bringing up what the media said when we're talking about something completely different?
Why do you
rationalization for that is?
DroneTek, why is it that why is it that your side is so homophobic?
I want to know why he's so sensitive.
Wait, is that wait a second? Is that wait? It's a loaded question. It has nothing to do with what we were discussing. Same thing about the media. Like, who cares? What does the media have to do with what I just said? I just brought up QAnon once in the conversation, and now it's like, wow, Dylan,
Right,
just
because
QAnon
it's just like a
crazy.
constant topic. I don't understand.
Why are you so sensitive when someone brings it up?
No, look. So you talk about conspiracy movements. Conspiracy movements on your side are way more mainstream and have resulted in way more death and destruction. Why are you bringing up QAnon? Who gives a fuck about QAnon?
Dude, honestly, I've never read anything that's QAnon.
We heard his
Are we just
feelings.
gonna pivot off the point that I just sent you the exact evidence of the exact?
Revelife asked me, was the election stolen? Let me answer you, Revelife. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't buy into that stuff. So Biden won as far as I'm concerned.
They're anomalies.
But every election that Democrats don't win, we're told was stolen. I just want to point that out. Yes. And then we're told that the only pretty much the situation we're living in this country is that the only legitimate election is one that Democrats win. And then questioning that election is heresy, treason.
Democratic.
Hillary conceded Trump didn't
question the elections that Republican wins. They can do whatever they want. But if you do the same thing when they win, you're treasonous.
Hillary conceded Trump didn't.
Yes. Eloquently put, DroneTek. Eloquently put.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
Well, I didn't come in here to discuss the election fraud allegations. You guys have a good one.
Ridiculous TV asked me if
I don't listen to him.
I think gay marriage is immoral. No, I do not. I love gay people. I'm fine with gay people.
I love gay people too. I love them so much. I date them.
Gay people should get married, and I hope they have good lives. I'm good.
Wonderful. I'll invite you to my marriage. Okay.
And I'm very happy for my buddy here, Dylan.
Thank you very much.
Wait, Dylan, you're gay?
Yes.
And you're married?
No, I'm not married.
Soon to be?
I'm 20. I'm not gonna marry when I'm 20. That seems like a disastrous idea.
Well,
I want to be young.
Shit, you're 20 years old?
Do I ridiculous? This guy keeps asking questions. Like, ridiculous TV. Ridiculous.
Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him.
TV.
Don't listen to him.
Do you think Palestinians are Nazis? No, I don't think the average Palestinian is a Nazi, but I do think the leadership takes their cues from essentially Nazi-esque kind of
damn, I didn't know that Palestinians were Muslims were ideologically close to Nazis. That's crazy.
No, I don't think Muslims are. I think specifically the groups in Palestine. That's it. I'm not saying Muslims in general or anything like that. I think Hamas and Fatah are definitely derived from Nazi-esque roots.
No, DroneTek, don't shy away from that. Nazis and Hitler specifically met with Muslims in the Middle East and the Palestinian region to coordinate.
They did.
Did you know that the Lahai met with the Nazis as well, and they were a Jewish terrorist organization? Does that now mean the Jews are like all like Nazi sympathizers? Yeah, I actually got in a lot of trouble due to Jerusalem Post reporters got very angry at me for bringing that fact up.
Did they?
Yes, people tried to get me fired from my job because I brought it up.
Guys, can I answer this real quick? Super Plush Bear asked me, 1 in 3 Republicans believe QAnon. Can you name a single left-wing conspiracy theory more mainstream? Yes.
Okay, you guys have fun. Actually. I'm not here to. I came in here to discuss Israel Palestine. I'm not going to slide into.
All right,
okay. You have a good one. Okay.
I don't want to butt in on that.
I gotta go. I gotta go to bed anyway. Okay.
All right. Sorry, man.
It's okay, man. I gotta end stream anyway, so it's all good. You have a good day. Okay.
Thanks.
Actually, Dylan.
See you later. Oh my God. Oh.